I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Is there support?
Support.
Thank you. Julie, please.
Mr. Bucky,
Yes.
Mr. Dracos,
Yes.
Ms. McQuiston,
Yes.
Mr. Singer, Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Weedman.
Yes. Could I ask everybody to mute so we, until it's your time for a question, and that way we'll keep the airwaves clear here. Just to review our process this evening, we will have 4 candidates interviewing with us tonight. Each candidate will have up to 20 minutes. There are set questions, and what we have done is borrowed from the last 2 times that we've interviewed for a vacancy on the board, utilizing the same format with essentially the same questions, which are touching on the various areas of the operation and the role of a board member. At the conclusion of the interviews, I'd ask you to review your notes, and we will be asking each board member for your first and your second choice of candidates. First choice will get 2 points. Second choice will get 1 point. Birgit will be tallying those up, and then once we arrive at the high point total, we will take action to appoint a trustee as the interim trustee through the end of this year. So that being said, I think we are ready to welcome our first candidate.
Jim,
Yes.
just for clarification on the agenda, we don't have any
Yes.
public participation.
Thank you. I thought you would have raised it if we did. That's why I just moved on. Thanks. We'd like to welcome Edwina Patterson. Welcome tonight.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I just shared with the board our process for this evening. We are interviewing 4 candidates.
Okay.
Each candidate will have up to 20 minutes. We have some set questions that we're going to ask all the candidates the same questions. And at the conclusion, we will be determining the highest point total based on the votes of the board, and we'll be taking action tonight to name an interim.
Understood.
All right, so that being said, I'll start things off. We appreciate your application to the board vacancy. We've all had a chance to review your letter of application and resume, and we'd like to ask you a few questions as it relates to your interest in serving as trustee. To begin with, would you please share a brief summary of your involvement with the Lake Orion School District and why you're interested in serving as a trustee?
Well, first of all, my involvement as it is prioritized is as a parent. We have been as a family in the school district for 9 years. My son started at Orion Oaks, migrated over to Oakview Middle School, and now he's at the Lake Orion High School. So as much as time would have allowed, as a parent, as a working parent, I tried to be integrally involved, particularly with those activities that he was a part of. The sports program, I've worked since he was in the community Dragon team. I've worked with several parents within that community to help volunteer for activities for that particular group, and then moved over to Oakview, where we worked with Coach Maxfield and the moms that were a part of the football team there, and then now over to Lake Orion. So anything that my son was a part of at that school, I was involved in.
Very good.
Mhm.
Thank you. Our next question is from Birgit McQuiston.
Good evening, Edwina. My
Good
question,
evening.
my question for you is this. What do you see as the differences between a board member's role in district oversight and district operations?
I think that oversight comes as a matter of understanding that your superintendent basically runs the day-to-day operations of the district as it relates to the schools and the daily operations thereof. I think when you look at the strategic planning associated with the responsibilities of the board, that is where the operations comes in, the budgets, helping to interpret standards, ensure that processes are put in place for the overall oversight. I think that that's basically the difference. Operations, superintendent, oversight, the board.
Thank you.
Okay.
Our next question is from Steve Draco. Steve?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Please identify the two biggest challenges facing the Lake Orion Schools District and explain how, as a board member, you might propose tackling these unique challenges. Thank you.
I have to believe that within this community, there are some people that are working within the district that are affected by maybe budget cuts, changes in facilities, and issues that are associated with facilities management. There are so many different facilities within this community. I have to imagine that many of you that have been a part of this community for quite some time, it's hard to make those decisions that the parents or members of the community don't necessarily agree with, because they don't see the budgets, they don't see the requirements for making those changes and what that really means for the overall budget specifications, as well as some of the process changes that you have to make. I imagine that going back into the community as a parent partner, that's got to be hard to do. There's some things that you can discuss and some things that you can't discuss. And many of the people that you engage with on a daily basis are people that are being impacted by the decisions that you make. I'm not a inner Lake Orion person. Although I have been involved with my son as he's involved in different programs, I haven't been here for 15 or 20 years like many of you have been. And so my conversations are very, and would be very surface conversations, welcoming, because obviously the community are, those are the people that put you on the board. And so you want to be as engaging as possible, but you also want to make sure that you're keeping the best interest of the schools, the Lake Orion schools, in mind, and your discussions have to be very general, not very specific, but you have to be at least compassionate and have empathy for the disagreements that they may have with the decisions that you have to make. Did I answer your question?
You did, Ms. Patterson. Thank you for your thorough answer. Thank you, ma'am.
No problem.
Thank you. Our next question is from Nate Putke. Nate?
Sure, thanks, Jim. And Ms. Patterson, thanks for, first of all, for taking the time and effort to be here. I know it takes a lot of work just to put the package together and participate in this. It's greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.
Question for you. Yeah, you bet. How would you approach an issue that comes before the board, which is in opposition to your personal view, or your opinion is in the minority among your fellow board members?
So I've dealt with that quite a bit, particularly when dealing with the international union. So I'll just give an example there. One of the agreements that you have to make going into these type of positions is, first of all, agreeing that you're going to agree to disagree. Resolutions have to be made, and not everyone's perspective or opinion can go into making the resolution complete. You're a part of a team, and I think that you voice your perspective. You talk about the facts or data associated with your agreements or disagreements. And then you walk forward with what the board decides overall, because you are a body of many and not a body of one. And I think it's just important to know and understand that. And I've had the experience working with the International Union as a salaried employee to have to do things such as that. But even with the union, I was able to get an agreement that we have a problem that we need to solve. We may not agree on exactly how to get there, but we agree that we need to get there. And I take that with every problem resolution that I work towards. Okay, did I answer your question?
Yeah, very much. Thank you.
Thank
No
you very
problem.
much. Our next question comes from Scott Taylor. Scott?
Hi, Edwina. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
So my question is, board members get information on school issues from a variety of sources. What sources do you believe are the most valuable and appropriate for a board member, and how should this information be used?
So I know that you have a relationship with Oakland schools as well as the state. I'm assuming, without having a lot of intimate knowledge, that most of, if not the majority of your information would come from either one of those two sources or both of those sources, in addition to the issues that are associated with in-school issues that have to be resolved. Can you repeat maybe the end of that question? I want to make sure I'm giving you the complete answer.
Certainly, there was a lot in that question.
That's
so
okay.
The end of it is, what sources do you believe are the most valuable and appropriate for a board member, and how should this information be used?
So being an engineer, I will tell you that data is something that you take all of the data in. The usage of the data, when you say the most appropriate, is based on the problem. You could get data from the Oakland schools or from the state level or from the school level, and you're only going to use the data as it is needed for that particular problem. So it could all be appropriate depending on what you're trying to resolve. And so you choose the data, or you choose the resources, or you choose the information to be used to help you resolve the problem. Did I answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
no
ma'am.
problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is with Jake Singer. Jake?
Hello, Edwina. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
The Board of Education conducts some business during business hours as well as in the evening. We also interact with the community and the schools. And equally important, many issues that come before the board to decide and review require time, ability to study all issues, and to do the research required prior to the actual board meeting. How do you see yourself managing your time to ensure that you can devote yourself to the responsibilities of a board member?
I have managed my time accurately for 26 plus years. You prioritize. There are certain things that you have to give attention to based on it being time bound. That's the first element that I use to manage my time. Second and foremost, if I have information and I feel like it's incomplete and I need to gather more information, I try to bucket that and then figure out who the right people will be for me to get the information from so that I can make an informed decision when the time is right for that. I'm a multitasker, being a working mom for so many years, being one that has attended school while working, while being a mom. I have never had an issue with needing to prioritize my time to those things that are, like I said, prioritized time-bound wise. And so that's how I manage myself. I take my whole life and put it on a calendar and use my timing that I set for myself to ensure that I am touching everything that I need to touch. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. And finally, Lake Orion Community Schools has an operating budget in excess of $80 million with nearly 8,000 students and close to 1,000 employees. This requires appropriate oversight by the board. Please tell us about your experience managing financial budgets and human resource issues.
So I have had the pleasure of having projects upwards of 10, 15, $20 million, depending on new equipment installation in various facilities. Sometimes that required me working with contractors and ensuring that they stayed within their budget requirements, as well as even getting the budgets that were allocated for particular projects or for departmental use, and needing to always look for efficiency gain opportunities. And so managing that, looking from a structural cost perspective, looking at what were value-added items and non-value-added items where we could cut without risking the integrity or the quality of the project, both in maintenance as well as production, both in production environments, as well as on project specifics. As far as human resources, I have hired and I have fired. I have worked with several employees on behavioral issues, but I've also encouraged and inspired, because I think all of those things are important. You set your standards ahead of time, and you come to an agreement on those standards. So those aren't just telling standards, those are standards that you develop with the individual. And I'm talking from a human resource perspective at this point. You constantly counsel and correct. You know, these people, much like each of us, we have families. And so they're at work in their professional environment for a larger or greater percentage of their time. And so I was always mindful of how my impact to them would affect them and their families when they have to go home. And so constant communication, giving them an opportunity to course correct and to make things better for themselves. I would always say, help me help you, and give specifics on what that really meant. So obviously budgets are numbers that are given, but are expected of you to make them better, so efficiency gains. And then employees and human resources, those issues, you look for effectiveness and opportunity to make people better, which makes your entire situation better. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right. And then finally, in closing, are there any thoughts that you want to share with us about the role of the board member?
You know, I've done some reading in the Lake Orion information and materials that I've been able to find online, and others have shared with me, and I've had an opportunity to really do a good deep dive. It's very encouraging to see that you're so process focused. I am heavily process focused, and I like to see processes in place that keep you from being subjective in the work that needs to be done. When it's outlined, everyone can feel really, really good about trying to approach and having the right intent. And I think that's what processes do for you. I am interested, though, to know how some of the decisions that you've had to make, and I alluded to it earlier, how it has made you feel as board members having to go back into the community. I only have 9 years in Lake Orion, but many of you, I've heard your names before, I've seen you before in some of the activities. How does it make you feel to have to make the tough decisions and to go back into the community amongst your friends and your community partners, knowing that they're not happy with those decisions? So I guess my question is, what keeps you up at night?
Anybody care to answer that? or respond? I'll be happy to. Go ahead, Scott.
I think that this entire board, what we have learned, because we have gone through a lot of tough times together, and we always focus on what's best for kids. And at the end of the day, when somebody says, hey, my kid doesn't get to go to stadium anymore because, you know, they don't have the art focus, I can just say, at that time, in that space, we did what was right for kids. And I put my head on the pillow every night and I fall asleep just fine. And I think that we see now, hindsight is proving that, you know, it was okay. So.
Good. Okay. All right.
Anybody else? I would add that I would go back to your comment about our process. And I think that sound process drives sound decisions.
Absolutely.
And we've spent time on being data and process oriented, and that's led to our decisions. And if we've invested that time and it's been a solid plan and wisely considered, that when we have an outcome, we know it's not going to please 100% of the people, but it's an outcome that is in the best interest of the school district and students in the school district. And sometimes people may not see it's in the best interest, as Scott mentioned, immediately, but in the long run, our outcomes have been pretty solid and pretty positive. And so if we continue to look at issues that way, I think we'll have some continuing good outcomes.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your time. Like I said, we'll arrive at a conclusion here shortly, and should you be the candidate chosen, we will be back in touch with you on how to visit with Julie and get the process underway.
Excellent. Thanks for your time. I appreciate the promptness. I was very impressed and very appreciative of that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay. Bye-bye. All right. Logging off leave. There we go.
All right. All right. So, Scott, we didn't need you to keep time. It was pretty close. I knew he was keeping time.
The next candidate is in the waiting room.
Okay. All right. Well, let's have her join us here. Our next candidate is Danielle Brissett. Hi, Danielle.
Hello.
How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Good, good. Let me just tell you briefly the process. We have 4 candidates tonight. We're interviewing all 4. At the conclusion of the interviews, we will assign values to first and second choice from each board member, tally those, and arrive at a conclusion. And we'll take action on that tonight. And should you be chosen, you would we would have you get in touch with Julie Okel, and we would take steps from there to move the process along.
Sounds good.
We appreciate you applying for this opening on our board. We've had the opportunity to review your letter of application, your resume, and like to ask you some questions regarding your interest in serving as a trustee. To begin with, would you please share a brief summary of your involvement with the Lake Orion School District and why you're interested in serving as a trustee?
Well, I am myself a graduate of Lake Orion High School, as is my husband. We have a son, Parker, who's going into 8th grade at Oakview. And Parker is actually a 4th generation dragon. So to say we are dragons for life is not an understatement. And I just really I've always really tried to be involved in the schools in whatever capacity I could. Parker was at Blanche Sims, and if you ask almost any member of that building how many times a week I was there, it was quite often. And I've always said, when the time was appropriate, I would like to take my involvement in the district to the next level. And I feel like now the time is appropriate for me. And I would really be honored and love to serve the Lake Orion schools on this capacity.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Birgit McQuiston. Birgit?
Thank you. Hey, good evening, Danielle. Nice to see you.
Good evening, Birgit.
My question for you is this. What do you see as the differences between a board member's role in district oversight versus district operations?
Well, we are very fortunate to have some amazing administrative leadership in the district. I obviously don't know much about Mr. Kirby yet, but our assistant superintendents and our department heads and everybody on down are amazing. So in my mind, they are operations. They run the district day to day. And then the board comes in as the oversight to obviously make sure, you know, the appropriate decisions are being made and to obviously make some of these hard decisions. That's where boards come in, right? To have to make these hard decisions and vote on these hard decisions, but the operations come from our administrative leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Steve Rako. Steve?
Good evening, Danielle. Excuse
Good
me, bear
evening.
with me. My millennial interns bought me these headsets. Identify the two biggest challenges facing the Lake Orion schools and explain how, as a board member, you might propose tackling these challenges. Thank you.
Well, the obvious answer probably right now is the COVID situation and the challenges of having basically what in my mind, two distinct schools, the in-person school and the virtual school, and managing, you know, both of those and making sure both of those are up to Lake Orion standards. So as a board member on that end, I would constantly want to engage with community members and teachers to see what's working, what's not working, what can we do better, you know, and as a board maybe talk about that. And obviously to go with that is going to be the second part, which is the budget. You know, budget cuts have been talked about already because of COVID and just not having the money to send to school. So a lot of hard decisions are probably going to have to be made in the coming months, the next year, regarding budget and shortfalls and how we would continue to operate at such an elite level that we do now and still offer the best education we can with less money. So I'm willing to make those hard decisions and really look at numbers. I love numbers. I always say I'm a numbers girl, and have deep conversations about that and make some hard decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is from Nate Butke. Nate?
Thanks, Jim. Ms. Brissett, thanks for taking time. I know it's a lot of work to prepare. Really appreciate it. Question for you. How would you approach an issue that comes before the board, which is in opposition to your personal view, or your opinion is in the minority among your fellow board members?
I really say I like to learn things. So that's one of the reasons we have a majority board. I obviously would value everybody's opinion and would really want to hear and understand why they feel the way they do. And it may not sway me or change my opinion, but I would really want to understand why other people feel the way they do. And even if my opinion's in the minority, I think all of us would have enough respect for each other to understand that, you know, we have to have a majority board for a reason. Not every opinion's going to be the popular one, and not every choice that is made is going to be the popular one, but will be the right decision for the district and, you know, everyone in the district.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Scott Taylor. Scott?
Hey, Danielle.
Hi, Scott.
So board members get information on school issues from a variety of sources. What sources do you believe are the most valuable and appropriate for a board member, and how should this information be used?
Well, like I said, I am a numbers girl, so I would say also it depends on the decision that we're making. Like I said, a lot of the big decisions the board makes comes down to numbers, whether that's money or our resources within the district. So I would say data and numbers would be very appropriate, but also followed by people. You know, the parents in the district, and particularly the teachers in the district, because every decision the board makes directly affects the kids and the teachers and, you know, parents as well. So I would really value teacher input quite a bit to once again see what do they feel is working, what may not be working, what could be a little bit different, how, you know, what concerns do they have for the board. So I would say data and actually people within the district, particularly teachers.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jake Singer. Jake?
Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Jake.
The Board of Education conducts some business during business hours as well as in the evening. We also interact with the community and the schools. And equally important, many issues that come before the board to decide and review require time, ability to study all issues and do the required research prior to the actual board meeting. How do you see yourself managing your time to ensure that you can devote yourself to the responsibilities of a board member?
Well, I am very lucky that my job is actually, I'm a private tutor. So I have quite a bit of time during the day to do the research and do looking at the issues before coming to the board or whatnot. And also, because I am self-employed, I make my own schedule. So I have been making my own schedule for the past 19 years. I am very good at that. I have to manage many clients, but never had a problem. So I have the ability with obviously notice to make my schedule work, and I've always been very successful in doing so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Finally, Lake Orion Community Schools has an operating budget in excess of $80 million with nearly 8,000 students and close to 1,000 employees. This requires appropriate oversight by the board. Please tell us about your experience managing financial budgets and human resource issues.
Well, like I said, I am self-employed, and I am I'm the sole person in that business. But obviously I don't have to manage $80 million, but I do have to manage my own financial resources. But previous to being self-employed, I did work for a tutoring company, such as Huntington, but not that. That I did have to manage budgets and kids and things like that. Like I said, not at the $80 million level, but also had to do hiring for them as well. I was in that capacity to have to hire other tutors and whatnot. So it's been a couple of years since I've had that type of responsibility, but I have had it in the past, and would certainly be willing to learn and take on a bigger role in learning that and studying, the financials and really making the human resources decisions as necessary.
Great, thank you. So in closing, is there anything you'd like to add for the board to consider about your interest in this role on our board?
Yes, like I said, we are dragons for life. I've been in the district myself, and my son started here in kindergarten, like I said, is now going into 8th grade. But I know I mentioned it, I'm a private tutor and ex-teacher, so I live in the educational world. It's what I do. So I see on a daily basis with my own clients and with my own son, obviously, how the decisions that districts make really affect people and really affect the kids and the students. So I have a unique perspective in that because I live it. I live it with these kids. So like, for instance, when every district had to go to remote learning in March when COVID hit, you know, I saw it. I saw the frustration, and I saw, you know, what parents were saying was wrong, and what kids liked and didn't like and whatnot. So I really think that in that I have a unique perspective because I live in the educational world, but not necessarily in a school. So I'm one-on-one and can bring that perspective with me to say, this may not be working so well. We may need to reassess. In addition, I am a board member for the DAISY Project of Michigan, which I'm sure some of you may have heard of. Our main mission is to make the world a more inclusive place for special needs kids. And being involved in that really gives me another unique perspective into the special needs community. And I, you know, could pull knowledge from there to really start to address some of, you know, there's been, I mean, I'm sure many of you have seen a lot of parents, especially in this time, are really concerned about their special needs kids. You know, how is remote learning going to work for a special needs kid? What if my child is a parapro in school and I'm not going to have that at home? So I have many resources in the special needs community that I could access to really help us to make the best decisions for that population as well.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your taking time to meet with us tonight and taking steps to apply. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we will be reviewing our notes and arriving at a conclusion tonight. And should you be the selected candidate, we will process you with Julie and get you up to speed. Again, thank you for taking time tonight to meet with us.
I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.
All right. All right.
The next candidate is online in the waiting room. If
Okay.
you'd like to start early.
Yeah, we'll go right ahead. When we get done too, for the board, we'll take about 5 minutes just to go over our notes before we discuss our choices. That way you can review your notes if you need to. All right, we have our next candidate in the room here. As Mary Jo Burchart. Mary Jo,
Hello, everybody.
welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Just to review the process, we are interviewing 4 candidates tonight. We'll arrive at a conclusion tonight with a ranking system at the end. And a successful candidate will be sworn in. We'll do the process with Julie Okel and get that process underway.
Okay.
To begin with, we appreciate you taking time to join us tonight and taking time to apply for this vacancy. We've all had an opportunity to review your letter and resume and would like to ask questions about your interest in serving as trustee here. To begin with, would you please share a brief summary of your involvement with Lake Orion Schools and why you're interested in serving as a trustee?
Briefly, okay. Well, my kids have graduated. My son graduated in 2009. My daughter graduated in 2012. And when they were in school, I was involved in elementary school, middle school, high school things, marching band, go Dragons, football. I was on the school board for 12 and a half years. So I know how things go. I have continued to be involved in the community somewhat. And I just really love this district. I love being a Dragon. I've loved it since we moved here. And I would be honored to serve if you chose me.
Very good. Thank you. Next question is from Birgit McQuiston. Birgit?
Thank you. Good evening, Mary Jo.
Good evening.
Here's my question. What do you see as the differences between a board member's role in district oversight versus district operations?
Oversight is the job of the board. Operations is the job of the principals and the assistant superintendents and the superintendent and the finance department and HR. Our job is to oversee, the board's job is to oversee. And when there is an issue, we work through the board works through the superintendent.
12 and a half years. That's done.
Oh, I'm sorry. The board works through the superintendent. You can't supersede that order of operation, that order of hierarchy, because then all kinds of bad things can happen. So it's really the board's job is to oversee, set policy, say, here's what we want done, and the superintendent's job is to get her done.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Steve Dracos. Steve?
Hey, Steve.
Well, hi, Mary Jo. Please identify the two biggest challenges facing the Lake Orion schools and explain how, as a board member, you might propose taking on these challenges. Thank you.
Sure. Well, number one, COVID. I mean, boy, who'd have thought? So, I teach at the college level.
Right.
And so I understand the process of everything getting totally shifted from being in the classroom to trying to find a way to interact with students in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably a big challenge for the staff, but something that the superintendent and the board should have some oversight and gather some data, especially since you've got the virtual aspect and then you've got the in-class aspect, if that actually can maintain itself with
Right.
Being able to gather data from those two groups to say, are they both working well? And if not, what do we need to tweak? What do we need to change in conjunction with the curriculum folks to make sure that both of those opportunities are giving the same result or as close to the same result as humanly possible, because getting every kid educated on the same level is a huge task, but it's very important job of the board through everyone in the district. And the second thing is, honestly, the more things change, the more things stay the same. Budget. I mean, when I was on the board, it was budget, and it's still budget. And now, I mean, not to be Debbie Downer, but your job this year is even more crazy because the state doesn't even know what their budget is. And the fact that the school fiscal year is different than the state fiscal year has always blown my mind. Why? But you just have to make the best decisions you can make with the information you have at the time. And then if you have to massage the budget moving forward, you massage the budget moving forward. And that's one of the jobs of the board in conjunction with the finance folks in the central office.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Nate Butke. Nate?
Hey, Nate.
Ms. Burchart, good evening. Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. I know it's a lot of work and it's greatly appreciated. Question for you. How would you approach an issue that comes before the board in which it's in opposition to your personal view or your opinion is the minority among your fellow board members?
Well, first of all, I think it's always very important that everybody on the board gets to be heard, because I think that can cover a multitude of angst and bad feelings in the long run. But then when a decision is made, even if you're in the minority and you did not vote for that decision, it is incredibly important for the board to be unified and not to talk badly about a decision, even if you didn't agree with it. Because if the process that's in place is a process you agreed upon to begin with, then you have to be okay with the outcome. Because to go behind the scenes and start to talk badly about a decision the board has made undercuts everything the board does. And you just can't work effectively that way.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Sure.
Our next question comes from Scott Taylor. Scott?
Hey, Scott.
Hi, Mary Jo. So my question is, board members get information on school issues from a variety of sources. What sources do you believe are the most valuable and appropriate for a board member, and how should this information be used?
I think some of it depends on the issue. If it's something that's broader in scope, like budget or legislation, it should come from the Department of Education or the MASB, from their legislative or finance groups, or Oakland schools, if it's something that's still a little more local, but not just an individual school district. If it's an issue that involves our district alone, then it's important to get the information from the sources in the district that are in the game, that have the data to present. Because I have my degree in biology, so I'm a data girl all day long. So if you tell me something but don't show me the numbers, sorry. I got to see numbers. I got to see the data to see. It's the only way I'm making a decision. So it does depend, but you got to be careful when there's conflicting resources. You got to be careful. Listen, if they're credible, like right now, you will always want to make sure any source is credible. That would be my answer for that.
Thank you.
All right, and our next question comes from Jake Singer. Jake?
Hey, Mary Jo.
Hey, Jake.
The Board of Education conducts some business during business hours as well as in the evening. We also interact with the community and the schools. And equally important, many issues that come before the board to decide and review require time, ability to study all issues, and do the required research prior to the actual board meeting. How do you see yourself managing your time to ensure that you can devote yourself to the responsibilities of a board member?
Thank you. That's, for me, it's pretty easy right now. I'm an empty nester and I work part-time, so I do have time, for sure. And I'm always very good. I read through every piece, well, now it's not piece of paper, but back in the day, everything that's given to me, I read through. And if I have, what I always do is I make sure that I read that information enough in advance so that if I have questions, I can ask those questions of the people that provided that information before the board meeting. Because the one thing I never want to do is, if we're working with our staff or the administrators, sometimes, it depends, but sometimes asking a question on the cuff at a board meeting can kind of seem like it's undercutting them. And I never want to be disrespectful to staff, to administrators. So I always wanted to make sure that I had the time, I read through things in advance, and I got questions answered before a meeting. And I may still ask the question in the meeting, because I know if I have the question, there's probably people in the community that have it as well. Then I will ask it again, and I'll tell them, I just want you to know, I'm asking you this question at the meeting too, because I need you to clarify it for the whole community, not just for me.
Good, thank you. Finally, Lake Orion Community Schools now has an operating budget in excess of $80 million with nearly 8,000 students and close to 1,000 employees. This requires appropriate oversight by the board. Please tell us about your experience managing financial budgets and human resource issues.
Well, you can see from my letter, I was treasurer for a bit on the board. And so I understand. It's one thing to understand a home budget or a business budget. It's a whole nother thing altogether to understand a school budget, because there are so many categories and categoricals and general fund and all of those things. It's very important to, like I said before, look through everything in advance. And I think it's important, you know, sometimes in lots of, I'm on different boards, but sometimes on boards, all the financial stuff, you have a treasurer, so everyone just assumes, oh, that's the treasurer's deal, I don't need to look at that. Well, no, it's really all of our responsibilities as anybody on a board to look at the material and see if you have questions, and ask those questions to make sure that money is being spent in the most appropriate way. Now, when I was on the board before, we did a number of budget cuts. We started cutting the budget before it was being done by everybody else, because at that time we had a superintendent who was forward thinking and making sure we had what we needed. But it's important to make sure that when you're making cuts, you're looking for, I always wanted to make sure that as much as humanly possible, you stay away from affecting the kids and the learning of the students in the district. Now, that's not always possible. And, you know, oh, don't we always wish we could always keep it away from the students? Sadly, it's not. So that's my take on finances. With HR, now I've never owned a business, so I haven't personally hired and fired, but certainly as a member of the board in the past, there's been hirings and firings. And when there were hirings, you look at the information given to you by the HR department, again, in advance, ask the questions. You know, it's okay to ask why did you pick this person over other people? What was it about them that, you know, really made them rise to the top of your list? And I'm always very careful when I ask administrators questions. I go, look, I'm not questioning your decision. I just need information, because when I have information and I understand your process, I can be your biggest cheerleader. I can help other people understand why it happened. And in firings, you know, that's always dicey, but it's imperative that every board member always knows those are done in executive session. You can't talk about that stuff in public. You can get into all kinds of legal trouble if you do that.
All right, thank you. Finally, in closing, is there anything you'd like to add for the board to consider as your candidate, as being a candidate for this vacancy?
Absolutely. While I don't have kids in the district anymore, I'm still a member of this community. So what goes on in this community is still important to me. And I threw my hat in the ring, so to speak, because I know what it's like to have a board member leave without a ton of notice, and you have to find somebody to fill the space and fill the seat, I should say. And I know that there's a learning curve with that. And with all that you guys are going to be doing this term and this next bit of months that the interim person is in, you're going to have to be looking at data about COVID. You're going to have to be looking at data about things that are going on in the district. The finances are probably going to have to be massaged a couple of good times. And I thought that by putting myself in the mix, I could give you the option of having somebody who understands the basics of boardsmanship, who understands school finance as much as school finance can be understood, and not have to worry about bringing me up to speed while you're tackling some of these things that are things that a year ago you wouldn't have even had on your radar as things to consider. So I just want to be of service. If I can be of service to you, I'm more than happy to.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you for your thoughts. You're familiar with the process. We're going to close things out tonight, and stay tuned.
All right, thanks.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
All right. Are we ahead of ourselves here?
Yeah, we're a little ahead and I don't have the last candidate in the waiting room
Okay.
yet.
All right, we'll sit tight.
I think I hit a button on my said new earphones and it kicked
Oh.
me out. I guess that's possible.
It's possible.
While we're here, I'll just say something that I sent something to a few of the administrators, but graduation was amazing. That for the way I judged it was a parking lot full of people with smiles on their faces. There wasn't anybody who it was an escape. You got to forget about everything that had gone on, and the choreography of how they moved all of those students through, and it finished sooner than expected, such that it wasn't as dark as they might have wanted for the fireworks, but for all the work that everybody put into that and to make it an amazing event for the students. So I'm both a senior parent that had a graduate and a board member, and from both perspectives, I was just blown away and really want to thank everybody who did that. And I'll probably say the same thing at the next board meeting because, who knows who's watching, but while we had this down minute, I had to commend everybody who did such a wonderful job.
It's very clear. It was a very large team effort. And
It was impressive.
Well
it was really impressive. A parking lot of smiling faces.
It sums it up, right?
With fire trucks and fireworks.
Yeah.
And Def Leppard stage. It was awesome.
Yeah, the big jumbotrons on the side, and it had that Pine Knob feel with the two big screens that sometimes it's easier even at Pine Knob to watch it on the screens than it is to look up on the stage, and so that was going on, and the messages from Steve Hawley and from Marion were great. I mean, everybody was so happy to see them again, and so it was wonderful.
I've had a number of people in the days since ask if that's our new tradition, the new way of doing it. one step at a time, but it was that cool. That
All right, Susan is in the waiting room now, so.
All righty. Our final interview tonight is with Susan Flaherty. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
How are you?
Good, good. How are you guys?
Good. Just to go over the process with you, we are interviewing 4 people this evening. Following the interviews, the board will take a look at their notes and determine a candidate that they want to put forward. We'll take action tonight, and then that person who is chosen will meet with Julie Okel and get the process started for filling this vacancy till the end of the year.
Great.
So, to begin with, we appreciate you applying for this vacancy. We've all had a chance to review your letter of application, your resume. Would you, and we'd like to ask a few questions regarding your interest in serving as a trustee. So would you please share a brief summary of your involvement with Lake Orion School District and why you are interested in serving as a trustee?
Great. Thank you. First, I'd like to thank everyone for having me this evening, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak with all of you. With regards to your question, Mr. Weedman, I am a proud parent of a 6-year-old rambunctious, soon-to-be first grader at Paint Creek Elementary. So my husband and my experience started with her attending, actually, she's attended now Lake Orion School District for 3 years. She started with the preschool and pre-K programs, and then at kindergarten last year at Paint Creek. My experience at Paint Creek was great. I actually am now a stay-at-home mom, so I was able to volunteer once a week in her classroom, where I would attend and help her teacher with centers of learning every week, every Friday in the afternoon. So I was quite involved in the classroom. Through that involvement, I did get asked by the principal, the interim principal, Mr. Larson at the time, to join the Paint Creek Bond Committee. So I've been serving on the Paint Creek Bond Committee, actually with Mr. Dracos as well, in that capacity within the Paint Creek School District as well.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question is from Birgit McQuiston. Birgit?
Good evening, Susan.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us. Here's my question for you. What do you see as the difference between a board member's role in district oversight versus district operations?
Okay, well, district oversight versus district operations. I think the day-to-day operations falls more within the administration team at each of the schools. And, you know, you have a fabulous newly selected superintendent. So the administration really is falling, I think, in their hands, the day-to-day operations. And then the oversight of that, obviously the selection of Mr. Kirby was handled by the board, and the oversight of those administrators lies squarely in your hands. The oversight of the budget, the larger, bigger picture topics lie within the board's hand.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question is from Steve Dracos. Steve?
Thank you, Jim. Hi, Susan.
Good evening.
Susan, please identify the 2 biggest challenges facing the Lake Orion schools and explain how, as a board member, you might propose to handle these challenges. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure I think every school board across the nation right now is grappling with the coronavirus and how to handle that. Obviously, the school, Lake Orion School, has put in place a very good plan, a plan either for virtual learning or for on-site learning. I think the board, as well as the administration, needs to manage the plan and continue to watch as we develop with this crisis, how we may need to make changes to that plan. It could serve us well for the whole school year, but it does need to be managed and maintained and continually watched. I think another big challenge every year for every school board would be budget. We are potentially going to face a budget impact if our enrollment goes down potentially from this situation. And I think every year there's always budget crisis and budget crunch. There's a lot to do with very little resources in any school district worldwide, I'm sure, as well as any business. So I think budget is always probably top of your mind as well.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Nate Butke. Nate?
Thanks, Jim. Ms. Flaherty, thanks for taking the time this evening. I know it's a lot to prepare and I appreciate it. Question for you is, how would you approach an issue that comes before the board, which is in opposition to your personal view, or your opinion is in the minority among your fellow board members?
Yeah, I think I didn't include my resume, so I'm not sure. I did include a few highlights, but I did have prior to taking a step out of the workforce and staying home with my daughter. I had a 25-year career in management, in the management of human resources and purchasing and facilities. I was the head of those departments. So obviously, people don't tend to come to HR to tell you how much they love their job. And we tend to be in the minority a lot of the times. Same with purchasing. Most people have a favorite topic they want to purchase, or a favorite brand, or a favorite location to put that new building. So I've spent most of my career in the minority and in tough situations, making tough decisions. I think you need to be able to seek compromise and collaboration. You need to look for all. I think you have to look, even if you're in the majority, you have to look at the minority's side to understand it, to make sure you're still making the right decision. So I've had a lot of experience in that, and I would, I think, fit in well if that is what you guys are facing. I'm sure you are facing that a lot of times.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question comes from Scott Taylor. Scott?
Hi, Susan. How are you?
Good. Good evening, Mr. Taylor.
So my question is, board members get information on school issues from a variety of sources. What sources do you believe are the most valuable and appropriate for a board member, and how should this information be used?
Well, I think there are obviously a lot of ways to obtain data. There are the state, any testing that we do provides state standardized tests. Every school has those. We report on those. You guys publish those every year. So we do have hard factual data that we can look at. That's a snapshot in time. However, I think that does need to be held as a snapshot in time. You can't just manage the school and your decisions based on that hard data, I would call it. I think you also have to be in the community, talking to parents, talking to teachers, administrators, staff, to students, and getting some what I would call soft data as well to make your decisions.
All right, thank you. Our next question comes from Jake Singer. Jake?
Hi, Susan.
Good evening.
The Board of Education conducts some business during business hours as well as in the evening. We also interact with the community and the schools. And equally important, many issues that become before the board to decide and review require time, ability to study all issues, and do the required research prior to the actual board meeting. How do you see yourself managing your time to ensure that you can devote yourself to the responsibilities of a board member?
Thank you. I think I'm in a very unique situation, and I'm very blessed that I was able to retire 5 years ago when our daughter's daycare situation wasn't working for our family. So I was able to retire and stay home with her. So I am in the unique position right now that I have a lot of time, especially with her going into first grade, to devote to the board. However, I know that that could change. Potentially our family situation changes. And just to assure you all, to give you an idea, when I did work, I worked for, my roles were always with global organizations. My last role in particular, I was responsible globally, worldwide, for a strategy for all purchasing that happened for our company for end user software. So I was responsible to put in place worldwide the strategy that addressed every purchase, every piece of end user software worldwide. So we were a German-based company, and obviously they start 6 hours earlier than we do. And so I started my day at 3 a.m. And that was when I started my work day. The alarm clock went off and I came down here to this office and started. You have to prioritize and work accordingly. So I'm sure even if my personal situation changes and I do go back to work, I'll be able to prioritize these important topics in front of the board and make sure I'm addressing them appropriately.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Lake Orion Community Schools has an operating budget in excess of $80 million with nearly 8,000 students and close to 1,000 employees. This requires appropriate oversight by the board. Please tell us about your experience, and you've touched on it a bit already, managing financial budgets and human resource issues.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Weedman. I mentioned, you're right, I have mentioned it already. In my career, I was the head of purchasing and facilities for the North American area for a very large automotive company, their IT division. My budget was excess of $100 million. It was, it was always going down too. They didn't give me more money every year, they gave me less. So, and I'm sure you've all faced that with the school board and your personal roles in your companies as well. My last role that I just touched on a minute ago, the global position that I had, my budget was over 200 million euros, so significantly more, that I also had to manage on a global basis. And we were constantly looking for reductions. I mean, that was your role in purchasing, to get more for less and to reduce your budget year over year, increase your savings year over year. So I had a considerable amount of experience doing that. And in both of those roles, I did have large teams reporting to me. So I did have HR issues internally. And then obviously being head of HR, I had HR rule issues throughout the company as well.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
So finally, in closing, is there anything you'd like to add for the board to consider as having you as a candidate for this vacancy on the board?
Well, again, thank you for your time this evening. I do greatly appreciate it. I'm not aware, if you guys are aware, I have filed all of the paperwork to be on the ballot in November. So if I'm not chosen here today, I look forward to hopefully starting to serve with all of you in January. As far as what else I would want you to consider, I'm extremely passionate about education. I always have been. Both my husband and I are products of Michigan Public Schools education from kindergarten on. I have my undergraduate degree from Michigan State University. Unfortunately, my husband has his degree from a smaller school in Ann Arbor. He has both of his degrees from there. And then I also was able to get executive MBA at Michigan State University. My company put me through when I was on the management track. So I'm a strong proponent for education. I want to make sure that the education is equitable for all students, accessible for all students, and I want to make sure that Lake Orion schools are the best that they can be. So I'm looking forward to hopefully joining you guys and helping you guys continue to build on the foundation you've established.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time tonight. As I mentioned, we'll come to a conclusion tonight and move forward, but we appreciate you taking time to meet with us, and we wish you well.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen and,
All right.
and lady.
All right.
Thank
Good
you
night.
very much. Take care. Good night.
All right. So it's 7:14. Why don't we come back at 7:20, take a moment to go over your notes, and then we'll weigh in on where we want to go here. All right, everybody. And you've had a chance to kind of go over your notes. And I'm just going to go one by one. And if you choose, you can offer support for your choices. But your choices are to select a first choice and a second choice. First choice will be assigned 2 points. Second choice will be assigned 1 point. Birgit will tally those for us. And there it is, the official tally sheet. And let's start with Jake.
I have a feeling you were going to do that. So my first choice is very clear for many reasons. Mary Jo because she has the experience, can step in. The other side of that is there's no thumb on the scale. All the other people are running, but it really had much more to do with the challenges we have ahead of us. There is no learning curve for Mary Jo. My second choice, I'll say I was equally impressed by all of them, but as the process requires, I'm going to choose Danielle, and mainly because of her experience as an educator, that brings some perspectives. So those are my two choices.
Thank you. All right. You're next in my lineup, Birgit.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank everybody that threw their hat into the ring tonight. And how lucky are we that we have 4 qualified individuals that took time to apply and throw their hat into a race at a really difficult time to be a board member. Having said that, I do have a strong first selection, and that is Mary Jo Burchart. And I'm going to sound just like Jake. It was the clear leader to me because of her history of being on the board. Being on the board here in Lake Orion, understanding our district, understanding in and out of boardmanship. So to me, she would be a huge benefit to us. And my second choice would be Edwina Patterson. And she stood out to me because of her education, her vast experience in management, her involvement with the district, and her ongoing pursuit of education. She's with her PhD and her educational PhD. I felt she brought a lot to the table for us.
All right, thank you. Nate?
Thanks, Jim. I also had Mary Jo as my first choice and Edwina as my second.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Thank you. First of all, I was very impressed with everybody. I'd like to thank everybody for interviewing, but my first choice is for Mary Jo. I've served with Mary Jo Burchart in the past. I know her honesty, her experience. I've learned from her. So my first choice is Mary Jo. Second choice, I was impressed with everybody, but I have to go with Susan Flattery based on her letter of intent. The interview was very clear to me that she would make an excellent runner-up. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Steve. Scott?
I had Mary Jo as my first and Danielle as my second.
All right, thank you. And I would join all of your thinking on this, that it would be an opportunity for us in the short term to have Mary Jo fill in that role. And so my first choice would be Mary Jo Burchart. And my second choice was a difficult one because each of the individuals brought something different to the table. And it's truly a difficult choice. But I did give a slight edge to Edwina Patterson, and I think her varied background in education would translate well. But I think we're all in agreement, it appears, that Mary Jo brings what we need at this moment in time and will make a great add to the board for this transition period to our new board members when they join us in January. So I don't think we have any tallying to do we? There it is. All right.
It was clear. That was easy.
It was easy.
All right.
All right. I like easy things every now and again, right, everybody? So,
Yeah.
Do you have the motion?
I do.
So could I have a motion to appoint the board trustee?
I move that we appoint Mary Jo Burchart as board trustee to fulfill a partial year term through December 31st of 2020.
Is there support?
I support that.
Thank you. We've discussed it completely, so we'll ask Julie for a roll call vote, please.
All right, Mr. Butke,
Yes.
Mr. Dracos,
Yes.
Ms. McQuiston,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Weedman.
Yes. Motion to appoint Mary Jo Burchart as interim board trustee is approved. Thank you very much to all of the people who visited with us tonight. Again, these are the nice, tough decisions to have when we have a whole range of expertise to draw from. And I very much appreciate them taking time to spend time with us tonight. For Mary Jo, we'd ask Mary Jo to contact Julie, and Julie will set things up to be sworn in. Normally we do it in the live meeting, but in this case we can't. And then we'll go from there. So have I missed anything on that process, Julie? We're good?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, usually we can wait until the next meeting to do a public swear-in, so I guess we could do that.
We can do that then.
Potentially.
Well, we could do that at the next meeting, but I think the official
Oh.
swearing in has to.
Yeah, the official I still will do within the next year.
Yes. Okay, great. All right, on that note, we don't have any next steps tonight. Next step is the next meeting. So any closing comments? We've all spoken about our candidates. I don't think I hear any. On that basis, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for being here tonight.